My husband refused to sit next to me at a business retreat. "You don't belong with executives," he smirked. But when the guest speaker recognized me as their co-founder, he spilled his drink, and the reaction that followed changed everything 2 days later. We'd been married for almost a decade. Brennan and I met in Seattle, back when we were both just trying to find our footing in the world. He was in finance then, climbing the ladder slowly but surely. I was dabbling in wellness coaching, seeing clients out of a rented studio space while building what would later become Salma, an app-based wellness platform focused on mental health and mindfulness. At the time, Brennan encouraged me. He told his friends I was ambitious, even visionary. He liked that I was creative, even if he didn't understand it. But as years passed and Salma started gaining traction, then partnerships, then investors, he started minimizing my work. It wasn't abrupt. It happened in small ways. Passive-aggressive remarks like, "Must be nice to do yoga for a living," or "You don't even need to worry about numbers, your business is all feelings." Whenever we were out with his coworkers, he'd introduce me with vague titles like "She works in wellness stuff," instead of what I actually was, a founder, CEO, and soon-to-be multi-million-dollar business owner. But I didn't push back. I let him diminish it, thinking he just didn't get it. I figured it didn't matter, that we were still a team. I was wrong. Fast forward to this past winter. Brennan was invited to a corporate retreat in Aspen. Big deal, apparently. It was hosted by his company's new parent group after a recent acquisition. Executives were expected to bring their spouses, part of the family values branding they were pushing. He told me I'd probably enjoy the spa and downtime. That it'd be good for me to unplug. That should have been a red flag, but I shrugged it off. When we got there, the place was beautiful. White snow, mountain views, 5-star lodge, the whole 9 yards. But the second we checked in, I could feel him shift. Brennan slipped into this version of himself I didn't recognize, louder, more performative. Laughing a little too hard at every joke, over-explaining things to people who hadn't asked, name-dropping past projects he barely worked on. I followed him into the welcome dinner that night. Huge ballroom, crystal chandeliers, people in tailored suits. The air buzzed with fake cheer. We walked toward our assigned table, and I noticed a placard with his name, and only his name, at table 4, up front. I frowned. "Hey, I thought spouses were included at dinner?" Brennan turned around with that practiced smile. "Yeah, they are. You're at the spouses table. Table 9. "What? Why wouldn't we sit together?" He leaned in slightly, like he was trying not to cause a scene. "Because this is where the executives are seated. Come on, May. Don't make it weird." That stopped me cold. I stared at him. He wasn't joking. He had intentionally placed me at a separate table, away from him, away from the main action. I wasn't his partner tonight. I was baggage. "You don't belong with executives," he added under his breath. Smiling. Like he was doing me a favor by saying it gently. And then he walked away. I stood there for a few seconds, stunned. I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh, cry, or throw something. But I didn't do any of that. I just walked to table 9, sat down among a group of strangers talking about hot stone massages and who had the best ski instructor. The kicker? None of them even knew who their spouses worked for. One woman actually said, "I don't know what James does, but he's always in meetings." Another was surprised to learn this was a work event and not just a couple's getaway. And there I was, sipping lukewarm wine, feeling like a fraud in my own life. Then Lena Maddox walked into the room. Tall. Confident. Silver streak in her dark hair like something out of a Vogue editorial. I recognized her instantly. CEO of Gaia Corp. One of the most prominent women in corporate America. But more importantly, she was the one who acquired Salma last year. She was my buyer. She took the stage as the keynote speaker. Everyone leaned in. Brennan, front and center, had his game face on. And about halfway through her talk, She started talking about innovation, about company acquisitions that shifted the company's trajectory. Then she said my name. I'd like to take a moment to recognize one of the most insightful entrepreneurs I've worked with. She built something from nothing, and her vision helped redefine our wellness vertical. May Donnelly, where are you? Silence. Then gasps as people turned to look around. I raised my hand slowly. Over here. Lena beamed. May. I had no idea you'd be here. You're the reason we even have a wellness division. All eyes turned toward me. Including Brennan's. And right as I locked eyes with him, he spilled his drink all over his blazer. He tried to laugh it off. But his ears were red. His neck was flushed. He looked absolutely mortified. I gave him the smallest smile I could manage and turned my attention back to Lena. After her speech, people started approaching me. I was invited to join a panel the next morning. A few executives even pulled me aside to ask questions about my business model, about how I grew it, about what I was doing next. Brennan tried to recover. He sidled up to me later that evening, acting like we were some kind of dynamic duo. Wow, didn't know you'd be the star of the show, he said, voice light but tight. You never asked, I replied. Calm. Measured. But inside? I was boiling. He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Let's make the most of it, right? I didn't answer. I barely saw him the rest of the night. I was too busy reconnecting with people from Gaia Corp and meeting others who actually valued what I had done. The next morning, I was on stage with Lena and two other founders, discussing company culture and innovation. Brennan sat in the back. Didn't say a word. Didn't even come up to me after. And I think that's when he realized something had shifted. That he couldn't put me back in the corner. That I'd outgrown the little box he built for me. But he tried. That night, he cornered me in our suite. His voice was low but sharp. You embarrassed me. I blinked. I didn't do anything. You upstaged me. In front of my bosses. Do you know how that makes me look? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked him dead in the eyes and said, this is the first time I've ever felt like myself in a long time. And I'm not going back. He didn't sleep in the room that night. 2 days later, we were back in Seattle. And I told him I was done. Leaving Brennan was a decision I made quietly, but the ripple effect was anything but silent. The night we got home from Aspen, I waited until he went into the shower before I started packing a bag. Just one. A week's worth of clothes, my laptop, some personal journals, and my passport. I didn't slam drawers or make a scene. I didn't even cry. I just moved. When he came out of the bathroom, towel slung over his shoulder, water dripping from his hair, he found me zipping up my bag. Going somewhere? He asked, like he was trying to stay casual. Yeah, I said, not looking at him. I'm staying at the Columbia Hotel for a few days. What? Why? I finally looked up at him. Because I need space. And because I meant what I said, I'm not doing this anymore. He didn't say anything for a beat. Just stared at me, like he didn't believe it. You're blowing this out of proportion. I could have laughed at that. But I didn't. You told me I didn't belong. You made me feel small on purpose. That wasn't the first time. But it will be the last. He scoffed, like I was being dramatic, like I was just emotional. He muttered something under his breath about me loving attention and how I could never just support him without needing the spotlight too. That was the final nail. He truly didn't see it. And maybe he never had. I left. I checked into the Columbia Hotel, just off First Avenue in downtown Seattle. It wasn't flashy, but it had big windows and a view of the Sound. I laid on the bed, still in my travel clothes, and stared out at the water for an hour. Just breathing. Just being. For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. The next day, I met with a lawyer. I didn't go into the meeting emotional. I went in with facts. I'd been the primary income earner for the last 2 years, though Brennan never admitted it. The Salma acquisition had put me in a different financial bracket entirely, and most of our assets were tied up in my investments. It was clear I had to be strategic, not just angry. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Arden, who didn't blink once while reviewing my case, said something that stuck with me: "He sounds like someone who's more interested in your shadow than your light." She wasn't wrong. In the days that followed, I began reconnecting with people I'd drifted from, former colleagues, early investors, even my old business partner from Salma. One by one, they told me the same thing in different words: "You're glowing again." Brennan, meanwhile, flooded my phone. Not with apologies. Not really. Just confusion masked as concern. "Let's talk. You're being impulsive. We can fix this." I didn't respond. Then came the social fallout. A few of his coworkers followed me on LinkedIn after the retreat. Some messaged me. One in particular, Derek, a VP in Brennan's division, asked to grab coffee to pick my brain. I accepted. Not out of spite, but because I was curious. We met at Elm Coffee Roasters in Pioneer Square. It was casual. But something about the way he spoke told me the gossip mill had been grinding hard since Aspen. "People are still talking about your panel," he said, sipping his espresso. "Lena apparently mentioned you again at the exec roundtable." I raised a brow. "Really?" He nodded. "Yeah. Said you reminded her why she takes risks. That your story was the kind of win companies like Gaia need more of." I wasn't sure what to say to that. So I just nodded and thanked him. As I walked back to the hotel, my heels clicking against the pavement, I realized something had shifted, not just in Brennan's world, but in mine too. I wasn't just exiting a marriage. I was re-entering myself. And that process was equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Lena. Subject line: "Follow-up from Aspen, exciting news, she wanted me to join Gaia Corp's advisory board. Part-time. Flexible hours. Good pay. And full creative freedom." I stared at my screen, blinking. 2 weeks ago, I was a tag-along spouse at a business dinner. Now? I was about to sit at the table, because of who I was, not who I was with. I didn't respond immediately. Not because I wasn't interested, but because I wanted to be sure I was saying yes for the right reasons, not out of spite, not to prove anything. Just because I wanted it. I booked myself a weekend at Salish Lodge and Spa in Snoqualmie. Just me, a journal, and the sound of the river. I needed space to think. Not about Brennan. Not about revenge. Just about what I wanted my life to look like next. And that's where things really began to shift. The Salish Lodge sat like a quiet fortress on the edge of the cliffs, overlooking Snoqualmie Falls. It was early March, still cold enough for the mist from the waterfall to hit your face like pinpricks if you stepped too close to the overlook. I didn't. Not yet. I needed warmth. I checked in without fanfare. No spa treatments, no romantic dinner package. Just me, a suite with a fireplace, and the low hum of water crashing in the distance. I brought a bottle of red wine, my laptop, and a leather-bound journal I hadn't opened in over a year. The first night, I barely slept. Not from stress, at least not the anxious kind, but because my mind was finally stretching after years of shrinking to fit someone else's frame. I started making lists. Not petty ones. Not revenge plots. I listed what I missed: stillness. Autonomy. Real conversations. Building something that felt like it mattered. I listed what I tolerated: being dismissed in public. Walking on eggshells. Pretending I was fine when my husband forgot our anniversary for the 2nd year in a row. And I listed what I wanted: creativity without guilt. Work that made me feel proud. A home where I didn't have to explain myself. By the second morning, the fog outside had lifted, and I could see the falls clearly through the suite windows. They were thunderous, magnificent, and strangely comforting. Like a reminder that some things roar even when no one's listening. I sat by the fire with my laptop and finally responded to Lena. Lena, thank you for the offer. I'd love to talk more. The retreat was a turning point for me, and I'm still catching my breath. But yes, let's connect next week. I hit send, and it felt like I'd opened a door I'd been pressing my back against for years. Later that afternoon, I took a walk along the falls trail. Wore my wool coat and leather gloves, let the cold wind hit my face. I didn't bring music. I just listened, to the crunch of gravel underfoot, to the roar of the falls, to the silence inside my own head finally making sense. When I returned to my room, I had a voicemail from Brennan. It started like all the others. Hey. Just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. Then the tone shifted. I'm not trying to fight. I just want to talk. I don't understand how this got so far. You know, I was under pressure at the retreat. That wasn't about you. That was business. That line made me freeze. That wasn't about you. That was business. He couldn't even see it. He couldn't see that minimizing your partner is the business. That it's part of the culture he thinks he's navigating so cleverly, one that feeds off diminishing the very people who make its success possible. He saw me as an accessory. And the moment I became something more, something bright, visible, respected, he couldn't handle it. I didn't call him back. Instead, I called Arden, my attorney. We set a meeting for the following Monday. She said we could begin preliminary filings. I could already feel him gearing up for some performative regret, some "we can fix this" tour. But I didn't need fixing. I wasn't broken. A few days later, I moved out of our townhouse. We'd rented it in Queen and for years, up on the hill with views of the Space Needle. At the time, I thought it would be our forever home. I even had Pinterest boards for how I'd redesign the kitchen. I don't think I ever told him that. When I left, I took only what I needed. My books. My framed photos. A few plants I knew he'd forget to water. He didn't show up that day. He left the house for me to do it alone. Classic Brennan. By then, he knew it was real. I moved into a 2-bedroom condo in Capitol Hill, a smaller place, but with big windows and light in the morning that spilled across the hardwood like gold. I bought a used desk off Facebook Marketplace and set it up in the second bedroom, started calling it my lab. I didn't know what I was building yet. But I knew it would start there. The following week, I met Lena for lunch. We chose an unassuming restaurant in Madison Park, quiet, warm, full of older couples eating in peaceful silence. She arrived in a camel trench coat and greeted me like we'd been friends for 20 years. You look taller, she said with a smile. I left my husband, I replied. I wasn't even sure why I said it like that, so blunt. But she just nodded. Good. We talked for almost 2 hours. About Gaia Corp. About their future. About what she wanted me to build with her, and more importantly, what I wanted to do. There were no buzzwords. No corporate posturing. Just 2 women talking about possibility. She told me they were launching a new project, something between wellness and tech innovation, and she wanted me to help shape the vision from the ground up. Advisory role, flexible structure, no hard deadlines. I didn't say yes immediately. I asked for a few days. That night, I sat at my desk and stared out at the skyline. The Space Needle glowed in the distance, and I thought about how far away that old life already felt, even though it had only been a few weeks. I wasn't sure yet what the next chapter looked like. But I knew I wouldn't be writing it with Brennan. And for the first time in years, that thought didn't scare me. If you're still following, there's more to this story. It didn't stop after Aspen. Not even close. Let me know if you want to hear what happened when Brennan tried to turn the divorce into a power play, or when my name came up at his company a second time. Because things got messy. Brennan did exactly what I knew he would. After a week of silence, probably spent stewing, strategizing, and telling his version of events to anyone who'd listen, he pivoted. Hard. From confusion to anger to self-preservation. Like clockwork. He sent a formal email. Cold, legal tone. He respectfully requested a delay in divorce proceedings until both parties had time to fully consider the implications. He wanted mediation. He wanted a financial review. Suddenly, he was deeply concerned about fairness. Translation? He realized how much he stood to lose. In our years together, Brennan had always handled the surface-level money, monthly bills, budgeting, spreadsheets with neat little color-coded categories. But he never truly understood our finances. Not where the long-term security came from. Not that I was the one who had negotiated the Salma acquisition without any help from him. Not that most of our investments and real estate shares were in my name because I had the better credit and the capital to back it up. And now? He was trying to negotiate from a place of ignorance. Arden and I let him try. We didn't push back, just let the rope play out. Meanwhile, I accepted the advisory board position with Gaia Corp. Quietly. Officially. Within a month, I was working on a new digital wellness platform with full creative direction. I didn't post about it. I didn't brag. But word got out anyway. Apparently, during a quarterly board meeting at Brennan's company, the same one that hosted the Aspen retreat, my name came up again. Lena referenced me while discussing partnership opportunities with women-led innovation labs. Brennan was in the room. According to someone who was there, yes, word gets around, he turned bright red and didn't say a word. Then he started spinning his narrative. I started getting screenshots. A friend who still worked tangentially with his company sent me a message, so. Brennan's been saying you overstated your role in your old company. That you were just a co-founder and not really the driver behind the deal with Gaia Corp. Sound familiar? It was textbook. He was trying to rewrite my story. And I was done letting him. I sent Arden every screenshot. Every message. Every version of the Whisper campaign. She said one word, defamation. But I didn't want to sue him. Not for that. Not yet. I had a better idea. I called Lena. I want to go public, I told her. Not a tell-all. Just a talk. A conversation about what it's like to be minimized. To have your narrative stolen and spun for someone else's benefit. She was quiet for a second. Then said, let's do it. A month later, I was featured on a Gaia Corp-produced podcast. It was part of a new series highlighting female founders and innovators. No gossip. No bitterness. Just facts. I talked about building Salma from a closet-sized rental studio. About surviving burnout. About building the product that changed the course of Gaia Corp's wellness direction. I mentioned, gently, what it's like when someone who claims to love you constantly puts you last. When they sit you at the wrong table. When they can't handle your success. I didn't say Brennan's name. Not once. I didn't have to. The podcast exploded. Downloads in the hundreds of thousands within a week. My inbox flooded with messages from women, executives, small business owners, even stay-at-home moms, thanking me for saying what they'd never felt safe saying out loud. And as for Brennan? Oh, he noticed. He tried to clear the air by setting up a meeting with one of the Gaia Corp partners, an obvious attempt to do damage control. But Gaia Corp had already seen who he really was. Lena had too. The meeting was politely declined. Then came the final blow. 3 months after I filed, Brennan's company went through a leadership shuffle. His team was absorbed into a sister branch. Titles were reassigned. And Brennan? He was moved into a non-management role. Officially a strategic analyst, reporting to someone who had once been junior to him. I didn't do anything to cause it. I didn't need to. He sank himself with his own arrogance. And when we finalized the divorce? Let's just say, he didn't get what he thought he would. He had requested spousal support. Yes, really. Cited lifestyle adjustments and temporary career instability. Arden shut that down so fast it never even reached mediation. Between the financial disclosures and the documentation of his behavior, we made a clean case. He walked away with his half of the shared savings, some of his retirement, and his car. I kept everything else, including the condo I bought myself, the rights to Salma's ongoing IP, and my share of the investment portfolio. We met once, in person, to sign papers. Neutral ground, his lawyer's office in Belltown. He looked tired. Smaller. Like someone who realized too late that the world wasn't going to bend back around to make him comfortable again. He tried to smile. No hard feelings? I looked at him. Really looked at him. Then said, I don't have any feelings left, Brennan. That's the difference between us. And that was it. No dramatic send-off. No last-minute plea. Just a door closing. Now? Now I sit at tables I built myself. I take meetings with people who respect me. I mentor younger women coming up in the industry. I've been invited to speak at conferences in New York, Chicago, London. Sometimes I think about that moment in Aspen, when he told me I didn't belong. When he smirked and walked away like he'd won something. And now? He's watching from the sidelines while I speak on the stage he tried to keep me from reaching. Revenge, it turns out, doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes, it's just living in full light while the person who tried to dim you chokes on the shadow of what you've become. And I've never been brighter.